Welcome to Truth is Now Treason, a podcast that annihilates the lies but defends justice and truth, particularly the truth.
Welcome to Truth is Now Treason. We are here to talk about what the mainstream media is ignoring, the Trump assassination attempt. So, she's Lennox, and I'm Dietrich. Lennox, why do you think the mainstream media spent so much time on January 6th, but they're completely ignoring the Trump assassination attempt?
Things that make you go,
Indeed, things that make you go, So, the mainstream media keeps ignoring it, but at Truth is Now Treason, we're going to keep uncovering what they're trying to cover up.
Now, when someone goofs up, we usually will take it in stride. Why? Because we know we are all human, and we understand that from time to time we make mistakes. But what about when someone doesn't learn from his mistakes? Or how about if someone refuses to learn from his mistakes, and he actually takes steps to prevent others from telling him what his mistakes are?
Someone like that, you'd look at them and you'd say, grow up, right? It's pretty pathetic when you refuse to learn from your mistakes. Now, this gets even worse when this is an organization that's supposed to operate with zero mistakes. Now, we're talking about the Secret Service. Their mission goal is to operate with zero mistakes, because if they do make a mistake, what happens?
Someone dies. And it's usually somebody important, like the current president or the former president. The Secret Service cannot afford to make mistakes, but you would think that when they do make a mistake, they would want to learn from it.
Yeah, so we want to introduce you to Joseph Cuffari. So who's Cuffari? He is the Inspector General of the Department of Homeland Security. So what does it mean to be the Inspector General? The Office of the Inspector General. So it's an independent organization within a government agency, and their goal is to prevent and detect fraud, waste, and abuse, while also promoting efficiency and effectiveness.
He's there to hold them accountable, basically.
Yeah.
His job is to make sure that this office or this department is running efficiently and that there isn't any fraud or abuse within this agency. And who do you think falls under the Department of Homeland Security? That's right, the Secret Service. In fact, Joseph Cuffari has been a busy man. He wrote a report, and if you want to know the name of this report, it's called the United States Secret Service Preparation for and Response to the Events of January 6, 2021. I just want to point out, we are going to talk about this report, but we're specifically focusing in on the failures of the Secret Service, because this is important. It's connected to what we just witnessed this year with Trump.
Yeah, so this is a report that the head of DHS, Alejandro Mayorkas, has been sitting on for weeks, and he was fighting for it to not be released.
Keep in mind, traders, Mayorkas is also the guy who is responsible for open borders. Republicans tried to impeach this guy, but the Senate Democrat leader Schumer won't allow it to move forward in his chamber. It's that guy. Now, there is a Republican from Georgia. His name is Congressman Loudermilk. He has done everything he can to get this report released. There have been people working behind the scenes to get this out to the public, and it finally was, thanks to people like him. And we're going to talk about this report and how the Secret Service really has been corrupt and inept under the Biden regime. And one of the results of this is that President Trump was almost killed.
We're going to talk about three things that we know from this report that Joseph Cuffari put out and Mayorkas tried to hide. So we got all this information directly from a report from the House of Representatives. So if some of you are out there saying, oh, you're just getting this from Fox News, you're getting this from Newsmax. No, we're taking it directly from the report. The link is in the podcast description. Look it up. We are going to be quoting directly what this report says. And here's the first thing it said.
So this is again about January 6th, but it's connected to the Trump assassination. So he investigates the Secret Service and January 6th. The Secret Service admits to interfering with his investigation. Imagine that. Kimberly Cheadle admitted to delaying and interfering with the investigation.
Yeah, Cheadle also wrote that Secret Service wanted to internally review records before Secret Service employees provided the records to the Office of the Inspector General. So this could have prevented Secret Service employees from being transparent with the Inspector General. Cheadle wanted to do her own investigation before the Inspector General did their investigation. This is corruption through and through.
She could have just taken it and hid it if she was allowed to do that.
Absolutely.
She's basically saying, let me comb over the evidence before I decide how and when I am going to give it to you, if I do.
Yeah.
Would any sane policeman allow someone to decide what evidence that person was going to give to the police when a crime has occurred? Of course not. But this is the way that Cheadle thought she should be able to operate.
Yeah, the Inspector General wanted all communications of all Secret Service, no matter what level they were at or who they were. But Cheadle said that the communication of the higher-ups was above review. Well, gee, I wonder why she would say that. Maybe because she was one of the higher-ups? This is total arrogance, and it's a definite indication of corruption. And by the way, she used presidential exemption from this. It didn't apply to her. She's not the president. She's Secret Service.
Exactly. It just tells us that maybe the higher ups were hiding something.
Yeah.
So what we got out of this first point is that Cheadle, who was the director of Secret Service when there was an assassination attempt on Donald Trump, was fighting to prevent the Inspector General from investigating her department, who was to make sure that there was no fraud or abuse and that it was operating efficiently. She was fighting the person who was actually trying to help her department be better. Why would you fight something like that? The only reason why you would is if you're trying to hide something. And it just doesn't smell of corruption. It reeks of corruption.
Yeah, so the Secret Service was hiding what they were doing on January 6th. And they still have that same DEI hire there, who was at that time running the place. And we're supposed to believe that she's reliable? We're supposed to believe that she's not lying? We're supposed to trust someone who's fighting an independent review of the failures of Secret Service on January 6th. Wow. The Biden crime syndicate absolutely corrupts everything it touches. But wait, there's more. It gets even better.
So the Department of Homeland Security deleted Secret Service text messages despite numerous letters to keep all communications. The congressional committees wanted to see these text messages. They were told to preserve them. These committees, by the way, were led by Democrats at the time. They sent letters saying, hey, preserve these electronic communications, all these communications regarding January 6th.
Now, the first letters requesting this were sent on January 16th, only 10 days after, before Secret Service claims that they had a data migration that erased all electronic communication on January 6th. Could you imagine the coincidences?
Yeah, they could have waited, right?
Yeah, because Secret Service claims that these were deleted as part of a pre-planned data migration that was conducted on January 27th. So they were given letters on January 16th. We want everything. And then 11 days later, they have a data migration that
they just had to do.
Just had to do it right then. So they've got 11 days to set all these things aside, make backups or whatever you need to do to make sure this is available. Oh, gee, they just failed to do this. So this data migration happened. And Secret Service does not explain why the department did not pause or cancel the data migration because of the events of January 6th. And after receiving preservation letters from congressional committees.
So they have no answer to any of these questions as to why you didn't wait or why don't you have this information regarding January 6th after they were told to keep it and they still somehow had to do this data migration that made everything disappear.
They learned from Mayorkas the best. I don't have an answer at this time.
Yeah, delay.
Yep.
Interesting. And also, the Secret Service does not explain why no backups were kept of these relevant electronic communications. So we got these letters telling us to preserve them. 11 days later, we must do this migration process. And it just suddenly just deletes the days that we need. And we have no backups too.
Yeah, so they did not notify the Office of the Inspector General that they had deleted these records until almost an entire year later in February 23rd of 2022. And on top of that, it's not clear that when, if ever, the Secret Service notified the congressional oversight committees that had deleted these records.
And Secret Service has an obligation to notify these congressional committees of this issue, and they failed to do it.
Yeah, this is the equivalent of destruction of evidence. It's a crime. But in the Biden regime, crime is the name of the game, baby. So move along. There's nothing to see here. Yeah, keep this in mind. If you're voting for Kamala, you're voting for nonsense like this. You're voting for a regime where the government is not held accountable. No one who is a Democrat pays for their crimes, and the safety and security of the American citizen means nothing. We know this for sure from the last point that we're going to cover in regards to this.
Yeah, so remember, this is all the things that the Inspector General has found to be true regarding January 6th with the Secret Service. Some of these things happened, and we now know also with the Trump assassination, some of the same things have occurred as well. So here's the third point, and you're going to know this. The Inspector General identified communication challenges as a significant issue for Secret Service on January 6th. Listen to this. Specifically, the Secret Service had issues communicating with whom? Local law enforcement on January 6th as a significant issue that should be addressed. According to the Inspector General's report, Secret Service was unable to effectively communicate with the Capitol Police. That's the police force that is specifically responsible for protecting the Capitol. They could not communicate. The Capitol Police could not communicate with the Secret Service that were surrounding or with Vice President Pence when he was at the Capitol with the rioters in the building.
And so this is the same issue that they had when it came to communicating with local law enforcement on July 13th in Butler, Pennsylvania. Same problem, 3.5 years later. Additionally, Secret Service did not conduct an after-action review of their support mission to the Capitol, so they left these communication breakdowns unaddressed. They knew this was the issue on January the 6th, and they did nothing to address it.
Do they normally do the after-action review?
Well, it's normal when you're not trying to cover stuff up.
And we just forgot to do one.
Did that sound too much like a white supremacist Christian nationalist?
It probably sounded more like the truth. Communication problems between local police and Secret Service were known almost 4 years ago when January 6th happened.
Yet they're still continuing to happen. In fact, here's CBS News, a liberal source. This is what they said the local SWAT team had to say about communication in Butler, Pennsylvania, the day of the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. They said, and I quote, the team also said that its clear attempts to alert Secret Service of something suspicious were never acted upon due to communication issues.
Most people who know the facts about January 6th, we know that there were things that they should have done and they failed to do. They allowed that violence to occur. You know, the question is did they want something to happen at this rally? Because some of the similarities, there's too many similarities between what happened on January 6th with the Secret Service and what happened with the Secret Service on July 13th with Trump.
You've got inaction and failure on January 6th. You've got inaction and failure on July 13th. Too many things that are just way too similar.
And it's slanted in one direction.
Exactly.
MAGA supporters and Trump.
Yep.
Now, even the far left, The Hill, had this to say from a direct quote from Ronald Rowe. Now, he's the guy who took the place of Kim Cheadle, who resigned from being the director of the Secret Service a few weeks ago. And I quote, Acting Secret Service Director Ronald Rowe pledged to right the agency and regain trust after the assassination attempt against former President Trump, but acknowledged there would be significant difficulties in streamlining communication with the local law enforcement officers who help at events, unquote. So here Roe is admitting he and his agency are not doing a good job communicating with local law enforcement. The same thing that the IG and other people have identified as a failure for the Secret Service.
Yeah, so you've got Secret Service knew 4 years ago this was an issue. Roe was there at that time, but he did nothing. They did nothing. Nothing. They fought to hide a report that exposes this. They knew it was an issue, and they did nothing.
The agency that is to be all about security has now been exposed as the epitome of insecurity. 4 years of, oh well, and now we are supposed to believe that now everything's going to change. There is one thing that needs to change, and that's all of the leadership at the Secret Service. It might even go higher to Mayorkas. It might even go higher to Biden and Harris. And I say Biden and Harris because, remember, the president appoints the person over Homeland Security, and the Homeland Security oversees Secret Service. So it's leadership. Everyone, every single one, every last one of them need to be gone.
Yeah, there's no way to trust this organization until there's a complete overhaul. Even if someone at the top is not complicit in the corruption and failures with January 6th and the Secret Service, they knew the issues at hand with communication. And if you weren't complicit, you're aware. And if you don't have the balls to stand up and call out something that's a threat to national security, then you have absolutely no business being in national security.
New facts are coming out about the Secret Service and its failures that day at the Trump rally. And we plan to tell you more about that in our next episode to this series, Bulletproof 3. Now, we are nowhere near done with this, traders. We will continue to fight this.
Just like Trump shouted, fight, fight, fight!